Given Naruto as a series has been around for almost 30 years in manga format, to say that it has had its fair share of controversial moments, it is an understatement. For every major plot twist that the story gave us that just blew our minds, there were a couple of moments in universe that, upon first reception, they were labeled, for lack of better words, a complete ass pull, because they seemingly came out of nowhere. Yet, it is often the case with a lot of battle shonen. That word gets thrown around way too much. A classic example of this being how people initially called Kakashi getting Perfect Susanoo an ass pull, and why even almost 11 years after that moment happened in the manga for the first time, we still have people who don't quite understand how this happened and why it's not a plot hole. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video, where we take a look at both the in-universe explanation for how Kakashi got the Perfect Susanoo, as well as, most importantly, the deeper meaning that is rooted in the inspiration behind the whole sequence itself, something I'm very excited to discuss, since usually when this topic is broached, people tend to focus only on the in-universe answer and they don't go any deeper, which is a shame, because understanding that portion will make you view this whole Kakashi and Obito sequence with teary eyes when you do so. If you don't shed some manly tears after watching this video and watching Obito speak to Kakashi from the afterlife, I don't think you have a heart. So let's get the easy part out of the way right now, which is the in-universe answer. So as we all know, in order for someone to have the Mangekyou Sharingan and use Susanoo, they have to have first awakened the Mangekyou Sharingan inside of both of their eyes, and at some point, both eyes needed to have been in possession of the user when that Mangekyou Sharingan chakra is activated at any point. We see this with characters like Madara, Sasuke, Shisui, and Itachi, who at various points they awakened the Mangekyou, and then after having doing so, they were able to use their Susanoo to varying different degrees, even after not being in possession of their eyes, like blind Madara using a Susanoo when fighting the Biju, Shisui in the Ninja Escapades OVA that Naruto series creator Masashi Kishimoto wrote. Shisui used it against Danzo's Anbu, and he only had one eye when he did so, so that by extension carries over to Sasuke. Itachi was also able to use it after his Sharingan lost his light. He still produced a Susanoo. However, what about Kakashi and Obito? Both of them had Mangekyou, but neither of them used Susanoo for the reason we just went over. At no point prior to the war were they either in possession of both Mangekyou Sharingan inside the same body, but when Obito did have both Sharingan, at any point he could have used the Susanoo in volume 71, but the priority was saving Sasuke. It was not battling Kaguya. However, what about Kakashi? Well, if you go to Naruto chapter 688, he tells Rin that he needs to make sure that Kakashi doesn't get himself killed, that he in this instance being Obito, and he says that because of how Chakra works, he can connect with Kakashi again. Obito's Chakra is then showing flying out the ashes left behind in his body, and it directly flies into Kakashi's eyes, but he specifically says the power he's giving has a set time limit. That is how Kakashi got the Mangekyou. And as for the Perfect Susanoo, people like to call that a plot hole, because Kakashi and Obito didn't have the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, but in Naruto chapter 689, it is strongly implied that Obito's six-path chakra massively amped all of the ocular powers, which that lines up with the whole point of the Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, which is that it merges the chakra of the person whose eyes are being transplanted with the person's chakra who is receiving the eyes. As stated by Sasuke after first getting them implanted, he says he can feel Itachi's chakra merging with his, flowing into him. The six-path amp, it might be something that you call lazy writing, and I won't argue with you there, but six-path chakra amping things up, it is consistent with what we've seen in the series itself. However, let's go even deeper here and let's look at what inspired this whole process, the true meat and potatoes of this video. So the scene in Naruto chapter 688 where Obito's chakra from the afterlife enters into Kakashi and temporarily grants him the Mangekyou Sharingan and six-pass chakra. It is heavily rooted in Japanese spiritual beliefs, particularly from Shintoism and Buddhism, and the real-world concept of chakra as energy itself. So chakra as a real-world concept and its influence is where we have to start first. So in various real-world traditions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, chakra is considered a vital energy that exists beyond the physical body, persisting to exist even after death in certain cases. The idea that chakra can be passed from one being to another, even posthumously, it is reminiscent of several of these teachings. So in Hindu and Taoist traditions, the idea of a life force that can be transferred to another person aligns with the belief of prana, and it continues to exist beyond bodily death. This is also something consistent with qi, which is vital breath itself. So in Taoism, this is reflected in how sages and immortals, they can leave behind their energy to guide others. When you get into the Tibetan Buddhism, in terms of the Tukdom state, some Buddhist monks, even after physical death, are able to remain in deep meditation, radiating spiritual energy to help others. This mirrors Obito's chakra persisting after death to aid Kakashi. Monks and sages go hand in hand. That's why someone with Sage's six-pass chakra was able to do this with Kakashi. You also have spiritual possession and empowerment. The idea of receiving a departed soul's power can be seen as part of a shamanic tradition, where spirits of ancestors or deities, they temporarily bestow strength upon individuals. Obito's chakra flying into Kakashi follows a similar pattern. Thus, the transfer of Obito's chakra symbolizes the persistence of spiritual energy beyond the body and how it can be used to empower others in times of need. When you get into the Shinto inspirations, helping a friend from the afterlife, that's also something very important. So in Shintoism, which is Japanese indigenous belief system, it teaches that spirits of the deceased, kami, remain present in the world and can still influence living beings in a time of crisis. This is a time of crisis for Kakashi. As Obito said, he can't stand around there like a scarecrow, even though his name means scarecrow, because doing so would ultimately get him killed. There are multiple Shinto concepts that parallel Obito's act of aiding Kakashi from beyond the grave. For instance, Mitama, the departed soul's influence on the living. In Shinto belief, a deceased person's mitama, their spirit, it does not simply vanish. It can still bless or curse the living. Obito, having let go of his hatred and resolved his regrets, go back to that moment where he's looking over the shoulder at Naruto, and go back to that moment where he saves Kakashi from Kaguya's murderous Ashbone Jutsu. That's why that was done. So he is blessing Kakashi by lending him his chakra, and he is guiding him in this monumental final battle. Also, you have heroic spirits and divine intervention. In many Japanese legends, it tells the stories of warriors receiving blessings or power from the spirits of fallen comrades. This aligns with how Obito's lingering chakra momentarily turns Kakashi into a nearly divine figure, allowing him to stand alongside and even surpass Naruto and Sasuke in that battle against Kaguya, with Kakashi dishing out the most damage to Kaguya in that entire battle itself. Him standing up to a goddess. That's why that was done. You also have the Shinto guardian spirits and the concept of love beyond death. There are numerous folktales in Japanese where the spirits of departed loved ones briefly return to guide or protect the living, much like how Obito, despite being dead, remains with Kakashi as an unseen force of protection to everyone except for Hagoromo, another god who realized what it was that Obito was doing. Sasuke was able to sense the chakra, but even Sasuke couldn't make sense of what was going on. Obito's chakra is not just a power boost. It represents his lingering will to protect the world through Kakashi itself, much like how a kami ensures the safety of those left behind, kami also being a play on kamui, the main jutsu that Obito gave Kakashi that allowed him to battle against Kaguya to save the world. Now, the Buddhist inspirations, the nature of enlightened beings giving power is next we have to look at. So Buddhism provides another significant layer to this entire event, particularly the understanding of enlightenment and posthumous existence. So the Bodhisattvas transferring merit is the thing we have to focus in on. So in some aspects of Buddhism, enlightened beings, they can transfer their spiritual merit to others to help them achieve enlightenment. Obito mirrors this as he sacrifices his power to elevate Kakashi to a higher spiritual and combat state for a temporary period of time. You also have one of the Bodhisattvas, Jizo, who helps the souls from the afterlife. In Japanese Buddhism, Jizo is a Bodhisattva who guides souls after death, but also aids the living when called upon. Obito's lingering presence after death, it reflects this, as he temporarily grants Kakashi divine-like abilities to complete his mission. That's why you have the sudden enlightenment, which is known as Satori, and the temporary awakening. Buddhist texts, they describe how one can experience Kensho, which is a glimpse of enlightenment or a temporary moment of transcendence through a master's guidance. Kakashi's brief ascension into a godlike power, it reflects this. Obito, having already crossed into the afterlife, he temporarily bestows a piece of his understanding to his best friend. This also brings us into why Obito's six-pass chakra specifically awakened inside of Kakashi. Six-pass chakra is an energy that is normally associated in the universe with human beings transcending human limitations. That's why everyone who has six-pass chakra is on a whole different tier. The reason why Obito was able to temporarily pass this on to Kakashi, it aligns with the spiritual concepts. Six-pass chakra as a karmic power. In Buddhist terms, karma is transferred through rebirth and intent. Since Obito had already attained six-pass before dying, his lingering will still carried that level of power. The awakening through the departed mirror is the other thing you have to look at. So many spiritual traditions, they speak of inheriting wisdom or power from a departed teacher. Kakashi, a man who always saw himself as being lost on the path of life following the death of Obito, was momentarily given a power that transcended the norm, given guidance through Obito, finding his way back on this path of life, back to seeing Team 7 working together, and it represents the spiritual awakening through Obito's last gift to him. This is why, again, when Kakashi says, "I love you guys," you should be looking at this a little bit differently now. Now, divine possession, it is for a purpose here. In Shinto and Buddhist stories, deities and spirits sometimes borrow a living person's body for a short period of time to accomplish something, in particular something extremely necessary. Kakashi's temporary ascension to divine power, it resembles this. As Obito's chakra, it added a level of acting like a guiding force for Obito to guide Kakashi, making him temporarily capable of fighting a godlike being in Kaguya. In conclusion, in short, it is a spiritual awakening beyond death. The entire event of Obito transferring his chakra to Kakashi is not just a power-up, but a deeply symbolic moment inspired by real-world spiritual beliefs. It reflects the persistence of energy beyond death, chakra, ki, prana, the spirits having a role in guiding and protecting the living. That's Shinto and Buddhism, the transfer of enlightenment and divine power. So that's Bodhisattva ideals and karmic inheritance, and a temporary divine intervention to fulfill a greater purpose. Kakashi, who has always lived in the shadows per se, following everything that happened with Obito's death and him trying to find his way back onto the right path of life, he was given a brief moment of godhood. He was given an opportunity to settle the ghosts of his past when it came to everything with Obito. It's not for a reward for personal ambition, but it is a final gift from a fallen friend in order to fully mend the fences with them. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and clicking over here on the left to check out more videos from Naruto Explained, or clicking over here on the right to check out videos from my Anime Explained channel, where I talk about non-Naruto content in the form of video essays, lore videos, chapter reviews, explained videos, and so much more.